Hello and welcome to Curriculum Development. My name is Kim Brenneman, and I'll be presenting to you about the development of curriculum and hopefully inspiring all of us as we go back into our classrooms as counselors and educators and work through curriculum planning. So today we'll cover the theories of development, kind of where it began. We'll watch a short video about getting inspired, review my references. All right, let's get into it. Theories of curriculum development. So John Dewey was kind of the starter of this progressive educational movement. He was a philosopher, a social reformer, and an educator. And again, he really emphasized that students being invested in their learning. In 1916, he published Democracy in Education, and along with that came this model here, kind of looking at the class experience, looking at past experiences, looking at external things, conditions that influence learning, interactions, internal conditions of the student, the individual, and how that all plays into future experiences and hopefully producing students that are lifelong learners. Next, wanted to look at the Tyler model. So this is really seen as a production model for curriculum and instruction. So that holds both positive and negatives that we'll get into later in the presentation. Ralph Tyler published in 1950 the Basics of Curriculum and Instruction, and he was also influenced by Dewey. And he invented the evaluation as a evaluation. He used educational assessment, so really looking outside of the traditional educational measurement. And a part of his publication was this model. So really looking at three sources: the student, society, subject, and then looking more at two screens, which we'll get into later, and then delivering. And we'll get into more detail, but really a lot of the focus was on this first part of actually producing the curriculum, and then the delivery was kind of an add-on later, but really more the emphasis is on this section. Next, we have Hilda Taba and the Taba model. She published in 1962 Curriculum Development and Theory Practice. She was also influenced by Dewey. And another interesting piece to her studies and her history is that she did an intergroup education project, which really used concepts of the cognitive and social psychology. She really was very much about the teachers having a say in the design and building up from there to get more of a general how will curriculum theory be given. And then we have the Olivia model, which is this textbook published in 2013. It's the 8th edition. It was written by Peter Oliver and William Gordon. And this is a very intricate diagram. So the squares represent planning, and so it's a lot of planning. The circles are more about the actual delivery and implementation. So it's a lot of inner workings that we'll get into more details about later. All right, so now I'd like to watch a short video about getting inspired from all of these people and their great ideas. Welcome to Curriculum Development and Inspiration. There are many things to consider when looking at curriculum, considering students, the curriculum, within that the learning units that will be available, and of course assessment of the learning. Let's take some time to get inspired by some ideas so that we can take it back into our own planning. John Dewey began with really considering the student in planning, looking at having meaningful activities within the learning, making the learning relevant to the students' lives to develop a love of learning, and then finally looking at classroom democracy, having a say. We also have Ralph Tyler contributing, Hilda Taba, and Peter Olivia. Tyler emphasized preparing the students for life, looking at both students and society as a source for developing the curriculum, developing skills in thinking. It was an inductive approach, so really looking at more generalizations moving forward and objectiveness. Tyler used two screens or lenses to look through when developing curriculum, a philosophical screen and also a psychological screen as well. The philosophical screen really looked at the school as a living entity and the importance of all cultures, socializing, looking at individual personalities. The psychological screen included looking at theories of learning, human development and growth, and how much length it takes to learn something. Tyler emphasized within curriculum planning, teaching thinking skills, to use intelligence and finding learning experiences that would be helpful in acquiring information, helpful in developing social attitudes, and helpful in developing interests. All of these ideas are great to consider in curriculum planning. Hilda Taba emphasized teachers contributing to the design of curriculum rather than administration, looking at learning units. She used deductive approach. She started with specifics and then building to general design and finally emphasizing behavior change. Taba was grassroots in believing that teachers should be involved in design rather than being handed down from administration. She thought that they could really look more at the students to design a curriculum that met the students' needs. In creating the learning units for each grade level and subject area, the first step was to identify gaps, deficiencies, and variances among students, and really to form objectives based on those and to organize the content so that students would be able to learn it efficiently. The steps were creating the learning units, implementing and evaluating them. That's the deductive approach, revising, determining the structure and sequence, and finally moving into school administrations, holding in services for teachers to learn the scope and sequence. Lots of opportunities for both teacher and student success within the Taba model. Now let's look at the Peter Olivia model. Peter Olivia's model is very detailed in this diagram. It has a lot of areas to really incorporate an inductive way approach to planning. It really looks at the needs that might be different between society and individual students. There is a lot of great stuff within this very complicated diagram. Let's take a deeper dive into the steps. The Olivia model is a step-by-step process, which has a lot of time spent in planning, evaluating within that planning, and then making modifications. And it's not necessarily a sequential linear process, but can go back and forth. Component 1 looks at educational aims and principles of the authors. Component 2 looks at the needs of the community and individuals within that. Component 3 plans out the curriculum goals and includes an evaluation component. And component 4 looks at and plans curriculum objectives. Component 5 looks at the organization and structure. Component 6 and 7 looking both at the instructional goals and the curriculum goals. And component 8 really looks at the specific instruction objectives and how they're going to use it within a classroom of students. Component 9 selects the evaluation that's going to be used. Component 10, implementation of the strategies. Component 11 uses evaluation of the instruction. And component 12 evaluates the total curriculum. Olivia leaves us with many great ideas about developing curriculum, really using evaluation assessment within that development to produce the most efficient instruction possible. And then here are a list of my references. I want to thank all of you for listening. I hope you found it inspiring and full of information for you to take back with you.